iLEAD presents to you Future Vista, New Age Careers. The topic for today's session is placing cinema in the digital era. The rise of digital has changed how films are made, how they are watched, thought and dreamt of. Advances in the digital technologies are transforming filmmaking across the entire project cycle, from production to editing to exhibition. Moreover, it creates a new perception of consumption. Particularly, the rise of OTT platforms is significant here. Digital filmmaking is the norm these days, but along with new opportunities, there are new challenges. Film students should be aware of that. In this session, we want to highlight these aspects. It will address how students can pursue their careers in digital audiovisual space.
Moderator of the session, I would like to have a privilege, I'm calling it privilege, of giving a kind of overview of this, how digital era slowly creeped into the world of cinema. And the best place to begin is from my personal experience. So I would like to take you back to the year, I think 1996, when the mass communication and videography department started in St. Xavier's College. And I think the same year, or maybe the next year, 1997, Father George, who was the head of the department at that time, he purchased a Sony digital camera for the students. But that Sony, I don't think you people have seen also that kind of camera where small cassettes were there, so we had to insert the small cassettes and shooting. So those cassettes were much cheaper than the Betacam cassettes. So, we could buy quite a lot of them and we were very happy that the raw stock is, it's so cheap, so we can shoot at length. We don't have to measure each footage that we are shooting and all that. So it was in many ways, it was a new experience. And soon after that, Father George installed an editing system. And I don't think you have seen that kind of editing system. It was a digital editing system, but linear. So there was a player, there was a recorder, there was a monitor with the player, there was another monitor with the recorder. The mixer, the sound mixer was connected to the player and recorder, and there was that editing console. So one had two previews, in point, out point, you put, then you preview, and then if you are happy, then you press record. Because after you press record and it gets recorded in the recorder, on the tape inserted in the recorder, it was very difficult to revert that, and it was almost irreversible. So you preview as many times as you want, and then you press the recorder button. And so many batches of 4 or 5 batches of students did their degree films on that linear editing setup. And then in 2003, if I am not mistaken, or early 2004, Father George installed the Adobe Premiere. And there's Adobe Premiere, so the subsequent batches of students started editing on the Adobe Premiere, and I used to take a back seat and watch the students work. And while watching the students work, what we had studied in theory, that Pudovkin had said that cinema is a plastic medium. So the true import of the term plastic medium dawned on me while watching them edit, because I found that, it was like working with clay. You give a shape to it. If you don't like it, everything you just bring it back to the lump of clay and again reshape it and all that. So there was no problem about it. And compared to that, the earlier linear setup, it was like working with chisel on marble. So you had to measure every the hammer. If anything goes wrong, then it's a permanent damage. And you had to, in some other way, you had to make up for it. So that is how we were progressing. And also, I know for a fact that in 2000, the batch that entered FTI in 2003, that took admission in 2003, in the first year, earlier both SRFTI and FTI, the first year they had to do a slide show exercise. Okay, with stills, slide show exercise. But the 2003 batch in FTI, they were asked to do a digital film. And every student had to do a digital, every student, okay, so 10 minutes long or whatever, digital film using that kind of digital camera where you had to insert that small cassette using that camera. So that was a change. Slowly we could feel a change that was coming, and FTI, in addition to having that Steenbeck setup, it also had installed an Avid setup. I think same thing here also in SRFTI. Avid setup, so both digital editing as well as the celluloid editing were running parallelly. But then if we go out of these schools, film schools, and see what was happening in the commercial world, this morning only, I mean, just for the sake of this introductory talk, I was noting down a few dates. Okay, so in 1985, in a film called Young Sherlock Holmes, the first animated, the digitally animated character appeared in this film. It's not an animation film, but there was a digital, not this thing, hand-drawn animated character, but digitally animated character appeared in Young Sherlock Holmes. Coming to the Indian context, so here is sitting Nilanjan, who was an associate of Rituparna Ghosh, and I have heard, and I do not know how true it is, that when shooting was going on in Varanasi with Aishwarya Rai, and so people in Varanasi, they know that, oh, a team is coming, Aishwarya Rai is the lead actress, and they wanted to watch the shooting, but you know, the whole space was cordoned off, except the police, because police had to maintain law and order. So these police uniforms were being given on rent for one day for 200 rupees. So as a result, the whole place was teeming with policemen. Okay, and then this is what I was told, that when Argho Kamal Mitra sat down for the edit, he said, oh my God, so many policemen on the other side of the river, you know, so how do we use these shots? So then with using Adobe After Effects, every frame, all those policemen had to be airbrushed, removed. I don't know if this is true, but somebody, he's smiling, so I anyway, so here, of course, the digital intervention was made to used not as a language to enhance the language or the storyline, but it was used to rectify a mistake. Keeping all these things in mind, and against the backdrop of what we have discussed so far, how would you define a digital era as far as filmmaking, as far as the world of cinema is concerned? If it is in one sentence, okay, one sentence, how would you define this digital era?
First, let me answer, ma'am. She said something in reference to Rituparna Ghosh's film, right? So, yeah, I remember I was very much there on the spot in Vanaras, but I can't remember anything of that sort happened. But what happened was there were a lot of frames in the film which contained unwanted elements. In the whole, throughout the film, certain scenes, because it was a period film, and in certain cases the actors were not conversant in the language. So we had to have prompters on the set. So keeping all those things, it was quite complicated to shoot the film. So in some frames, there were some unwanted elements which had to be removed, and it was done digitally. That is, that was in, I think, 2004. Now coming to the answer, like defining cinema in the digital era in one sentence is not possible for me. What I can say is like, see, we are kind of three generations sitting here. That ma'am comes from a much senior era when she started filmmaking at the time of like purely celluloid, and then both of us, when we were in SRFTI learning filmmaking, we learned on celluloid, but towards the end of the curriculum, we started getting an introduction into the digital kind of filmmaking. And then comes Modhura. She doesn't know she doesn't know what a negative is, right?
No. Yes,
oh yeah, okay. No, you have. But what I'm saying is that was a joke. but she comes from that generation, which is like very much in like digital. I think you are the first batch who did your diploma films in digital, right?
Yes, we shot our short films on film and we shot our diplomas in digital. So we were the transition batch, we kind of did both.
So-
Devjani is there with me. Devjani was my batch.
Yeah. So that is what like they are actually they have done both while learning. They have learned celluloid and digital. We didn't have the input on digital, not much, very little.
So in one word, in short, to define, the digital is an obvious movement towards future, which makes the medium more democratic, and distribution medium more democratic. And obviously, it has been. I think everybody understands that cinema to be watched in darkened halls as community viewing, that is almost becoming a passe, unless and until for spectacles. Otherwise, it is not necessary. So there have been filmmakers, so I'm not taking names, it's for you all to find out, because things have to be found out by yourself, lots of things. Filmmakers at the top echelons of the film festivals have identified years back that with the advent of the digital, whether it is a complete freedom from producers, as in from the production studios. But it hasn't been so why not? So on the one hand, it has completely freed up. It has made everybody democratic. One needn't be a elite filmmaker to make films. One is free to do lots of films. But that doesn't mean that the films always have to be 2-hour films or 1.5-hour films and always have to go into the elite film festivals. It can be made anywhere, made in several ways and distributed in several ways. As in distribution, not quote unquote distribution of big platforms, but it can be distributed in several different ways, which you have to learn, find out, and constantly develop, because they are always an emerging field. That in today's world, the earning of cinema has changed from halls to something which is more known as subscription-based revenue, and there are other ways along with it. But see, the whole monetization aspect is changing. So when one makes a film with her or his own vision or capability, it turns into a 10-minute or a 20-minute or a 40-minute film that can slowly move into an era where it can be monetized in its own way. These things are developing and will keep developing. So the democratization still continues, and it will continue, because the demand for software is enormous and the universe is simply expanding. The aesthetics is imbibed into the new modes of filmmaking, as in its mobility, its aesthetics, its disruptiveness, and whatever we call it.
What I find, what is the biggest advantage of digital, if you're asking me, I think it is an endless possibilities. When we're talking about digital, we're just not talking about just the medium, okay? We're talking about technology which is crossing boundaries. Cameras are becoming smaller, it is easier to shoot, and it is just what limits you right now is your imagination. And it is just not about analog and digital anymore. We have come to the point when we are talking about AI also. Artificial intelligence is the next big thing. It is going to be here. It is going to be here for the next 10, 20 years more. And we have to work in tandem with all of it. So when you're talking about digital, it is not just about the VFX, or you know how you can do work remotely. Of course you can work remotely. You can be just shooting a film in Nigeria sitting in Kolkata, you know, or somebody in Sweden can be editing your film even if it's shot somewhere in Jaipur, whatever. The global lines have got blurred because of it, and it is a global filmmaking community right now. But what excites me more because of this idea of digital is that the advancement in technology, in sensors, in camera sizes, in camera technology, makes it easier for you guys as filmmakers and us for filmmakers to place the camera wherever we want to, however we want to, and we can use it in limitless possibilities. You can put the camera in a glass, inside a car wheel, up in the sky, in the North Pole, inside your brain, I think in the next 10 years, wherever you want to. And that is very important, because that kind of opens up the idea of how further you can push your creativity. Because the storytelling modes, or the way of you looking at a film, looking at a narrative, looking at a structure, is completely different right now. But the point is that even how much we say that digital has arrived and we're in the digital era and AI and all of that it is, we have to really understand that we cannot talk about digital without or alienating it from the idea of the analog or the film. Because whatever it is, digital is a medium which has always tried to ape the qualities of what analog has given you. So if you don't understand film, if you don't understand where film has come from, I think that talking of digital has arrived makes no sense, because it cannot be spoken without a root or without a history of what filmmaking has been. So digital is obviously, it's crazy, it's brilliant to work with, there's a lot of different things we can do. But to understand digital, unfortunately, and I'm happy to say this, that you have to understand film. If you don't understand what a sensor is and why a full frame is important, then we have an issue. Full frame works because there is this thing called 35 mm. So if you don't understand 35 mm, there is no point of understanding digital. So digital is going to be here. It is important. There is a lot of possibilities, yes, but it has changed a lot of dynamics. It has changed a lot of viewing aesthetics. It has changed how audiences are getting their films or getting their mode of entertainment or the product that comes to them. All of it is there, but unfortunately or fortunately, and it should be so, it is linked to film. So you cannot forget film and talk about digital as an alien entity. It has to be spoken in tandem to what it was 100 years back of filmmaking processes.